the live photo that gave us away. I edit sound for a living, which means I spend 8 hours a day listening for the half-second everyone else ignores. Breath before a word, fabric against wood, the little fidget that makes a lie sound expensive. Clients send me podcasts and ad spots and apology videos. I send them back versions of themselves they can stand. It's a job for people who think silence is crowded. Maybe that's why the live photo undid me. It wasn't a video, just one of those Apple Parlor tricks, a still image that secretly holds a heartbeat of motion and sound. Arya sent it at 2:11 a.m., a picture of a hotel glass on a nightstand beating with condensation, city lights stacking up behind it. She wrote nothing. She didn't have to. I knew the hotel by the wallpaper and the old radiator and the view that made taxis look like punctuation. I was in a rideshare on the FDR, coming home from a late mix at a studio that still smelled like the 70s. I tapped the photo because habit is louder than caution. The sound it kept was quick and ordinary, a breath that arrived with a smile in it, a man saying MMH in a voice that belonged to someone who hadn't had to apologize in years, and Arya's laugh so close the mic kissed it. Then the ding of a text sent, which was mine, and the muffled, soft, unmistakable press of a mouth meeting skin. The image didn't move enough to convict anyone. The sound had all the evidence I'd ever needed. I didn't text back. I watched the glass glisten and listened again and again until the driver, a man who ate almonds loudly at red lights, said, "Rough night, brother." I asked him to turn up the radio, any station, and he put on synth pop that made the bridge home feel like an alibi I hadn't earned. I met Arya a year earlier when a fund hired me to polish a panel about ethics in AI. The panelists were men who loved hearing themselves say the word guardrails. She was the moderator who made them sound honest by asking a better question at exactly the moment the audience started checking their phones. Afterward, she came to the booth and leaned against my chair like she already knew where I lived, said, "You left in the good parts," and asked if I wanted a drink that tasted like citrus and pretending. She was dadding the fund's youngest partner then, a man with shirts that believed in starch and a laugh that bought the check. I was living with Lena, a web designer who could draw a kitchen in the air and then build it out of plywood and grace. Our apartment had a plant wall, an oiled cutting board, and 3 kinds of olive oil because comfort was a language we thought we spoke fluently. Arya and I learned each other like a song you claim not to like but keep humming. The first time we touched was accidental, an elbow in a loud bar nudging an apology into being. The second time was deliberate, a hand at the small of her back when we crossed a street too slowly. By the third time, her mouth near my ear, her breath telling me what a word couldn't carry. We dug the trench we were going to crawl through for months. Careful, specific, not enough to get us banned from a platform. Everything necessary to be ruined by a live photo at 2:11 a.m. I let myself into our apartment and set the phone face down as if shame could be flipped like a coaster. Lena had fallen asleep on the couch with a sketchbook open on her stomach, a pencil tucked behind her ear like she was calibrating dreams. I watched her breathe and felt the kind of tender rage reserved for people you're supposed to protect from yourself. I lifted the blanket over her and stood there until my own face learned how to be neutral. In the morning, the city tried to apologize with sun. Lena wore a t-shirt soft enough to make ethics feel like a suggestion and asked if I wanted coffee or a confession. "Coffee first," I said. She smiled, kissed my jaw, and poured the kind that forgives what you did last night. While she showered, I opened the photo again and listened with headphones, because there's a specific cruelty in letting the room hear what only you should. There was something else in the sound I'd missed the first time. The rustle of a curtain, a small clink like a ring against glass, and the whisper of a word I didn't recognize, Marlowe. A name, a place, a joke. I typed it into my notes like I was writing a recipe for regret. I didn't reply to Arya all day. She solved my silence with focus, firing off emails about a keynote, a panel, a breakfast where people would say words like outreach and alignment. I mixed the apology video we'd recorded for a startup that had pivoted from health to surveillance without changing its name. At lunch, I went to the river and watched a man teach his daughter to throw bread to pigeons the way you teach someone to use a password manager. Gentle, patient, a little too proud of being necessary. At 7 p.m., Arya called. "You heard it," she said, "no greetings, just the violence of competence." I told her yes. She asked where I was. I lied, studio. She said, "Can I fix it?" I hated the way the question turned heat into a ticket. "Not with a filter," I said. She was quiet for 3 heartbeats. Then, "Come over, I'll say the hard parts." Her apartment was the kind you get when you can talk a landlord into thinking your future is measurable. The hallway always smelled like laundry and someone else's food. I let myself in with the code she'd sworn she hadn't given anyone else. The living room was lit like a secret. She stood at the window with a glass of something you drink when you want to forget that drunk is a setting you can't undo. "Marlowe," I said, "because sometimes the best way to enter a room is with the part you don't understand." She laughed without humor. "The bar," she said, "where we met in college." He picked the hotel because it felt like an inside joke, which is his favorite flavor of betrayal. "The partner," I said. "The ex," she corrected. "Barely. He's transitional staging, like the plant your realtor tells you to put near the window." I watched her face do that calm thing it does when a story needs a spine. "You sent me the photo," I said, "on purpose." "I sent me the photo," she said. "You just live where I keep the truth." We had rules set long after we needed them. We didn't undress more than a body would in July. We didn't say "I love you" because I didn't believe my mouth deserved it, and she believed her mouth would make a mortgage out of anything it pronounced. We allowed each other the geography of shoulders and throats, the topography of a hip under a palm, the gravity of breath on a collarbone. It wasn't graphic, it was specific. I knew where to touch to make her laugh into my mouth. She knew where to press when I forgot how to be a person. That night, she reached for me with the urgency of someone who wants the story to change by force. I held her wrists, then her face, then her breath. We stopped before we turned kiss into leverage. "I won't be triangulated," I said into her hair, and she nodded, a small gesture with a large consequence. "He doesn't get to narrate us," she said, "but you do." "No," I said, "we do or no one does." I slept on her couch, knees complaining, the way men sleep when they're doing a math problem with skin. In the morning, I bought off-brand croissants, and we ate them like they were pennants. I told her about Lena's sketchbook and the way the pencil had left a smudge where her thumb wanted to rest. She told me about the partner's talent for sincerity between your ribs. We agreed to a pause that felt like a rope you test before you cross. Lena found the photo that night. Not the sound, not the live part, just the image of the glass, the view, the scratch on the old nightstand that looked like a signature. She scrolled, looked up, and said, "If I ask, will you make me regret asking?" There's a kind of mercy in letting a woman know she's brave before you tell her she has to be. "I'll make you regret not asking sooner," I said, and I told her enough without weaponizing specifics. She listened like a contractor assessing a teardown. How much salvage, how much dust, how many weekends? "Do you love her?" she asked, and I could only shrug at the word love because it's an elevator that skips floors. "I love the way she makes me wake up," I said. "I love the part of me that feels like a person with a spine when I'm with her. I love the trouble. That last one is a problem." "And me," she said. "I love the room we built," I said, and the sentence sounded like it wanted to be stronger than it was. We invented a framework because frameworks are what people invent when they're not ready to leave. 2 weeks, separate beds, no lies that need craft. On Sunday, we'd say out loud what we missed about each other without punishing anyone for having a body. I moved into my studio with a duvet that had never learned shame. I texted Arya the plan and she wrote back, "I can survive honest scheduling," which is a very specific kind of optimism. In my studio, the neighbors practiced drums at polite hours, and the pipes made old man noises when you showered. I spliced an episode about climate grief for a host who cried prettily. I walked to the pier and counted the slats. I bought a basil plant and managed not to murder it for 5 consecutive days. At night, I listened to the city make a noise that used to sound like promise and now sounded like a jury clearing its throat. On the first Sunday, Lena and I met at the pizza place we both pretend is good because the owner looks like our late fathers. "I miss you ruining my playlists," she said. "I miss your hand finding my waste in the kitchen, and then not knowing what to do with itself and deciding to stay honorable." I told her I miss the way she says my name in a scolding tone that isn't really scolding, how her laugh travels from shoulder to mouth like a small parade, how she always breaks a yoke like it owes her rent. We didn't touch. We folded napkins into boats like children and sent them down the table toward an imaginary harbor. On Wednesday, Arya sent me a link to a private YouTube upload labeled simply Marlo Roomtone. I put on headphones like I was putting on penance. The video was nothing, 30 seconds of an empty hotel room, curtain breathing, city heartbeat, the very faintest echo of a man saying MMH if you were listening to hear it. At the end, her voice, quiet and unadorned. "Does it sound like regret?" I wrote back. "It sounds like a room that wants to be emptied." She replied, "Help me." I didn't. Which is to say, I didn't go. The partner solved our pause with the only real skill money teaches: logistics. He left flowers outside Arya's door with a note that said Marlo then and always, which is the kind of sentence men write when they think history is a signature. He booked another room. He sent a photo of the radiator, a joke that felt like a threat dressed for Instagram. Arya came to my studio with her hair uncollected and her mouth determined, and we stood an inch apart breathing like a fight. We kissed like we remembered being gentle. We stopped like adults in a room with a door they intend to open again tomorrow. On the last Sunday, Lena came to the studio with a Tupperware of lentils that fix nothing and make it easier to admit it. "I don't want to negotiate all the time," she said. "I want to be bored with you and then invent a cure together." I told her I wanted the same sentence. We sat on the floor and counted off terms like a treaty. No photos after midnight. No sounds you wouldn't let a neighbor hear. No lies that require talent. She put her head on my shoulder, and we listened to the pipes argue with nobody. I wrote Arya a message the next morning. Not a breakup, not a threat, not an essay disguised as a boundary. 4 sentences: I choose the room I can clean. I choose the quiet I can live with. I can't be a soundtrack for your war. If we have a future, it will be one we can hear in daylight. She wrote back 9 hours later, "I hate you for making me better." Then later, "Be relentless with your peace." We didn't stop immediately. People don't. There were 2 more slipped kisses in doorways that smelled like lemons. There was one night we stood on her balcony and tried to make a plan with the city yelling beneath us like unhelpful gods. But we stopped enough. The partner moved on to a woman whose Instagram knew what to do with sunsets. Arya moderated a panel on restitution and looked like justice with a microphone. Lena moved back into our bed and pretended not to judge the duvet's history. We cooked eggs and didn't try to solve desire with pan temperature. My hands learned their old map of her shoulder. Her breath remembered my name in real time. Sometimes I think about the live photo like a teacher I resented and learned from anyway. It held exactly enough truth to hurt and not enough to win. It taught me to listen for the difference between sound that wants to be forgiven and sound that wants to be believed. When I scroll my camera roll now, it's full of ordinary frames. Lena's ankle on the couch, a basil plant not dying, a coffee cup at the edge of a desk with a list under it that says buy lemons, water basil, say it out loud. If I press any of them, I hear the same thing. A body shifting in a room that belongs to us, a small laugh escaping, my own breath arriving like a man who decided to show up before someone had to ask. Last week, a client asked me to take the tear out of a CEO's voice because investors get nervous when men sound like they have hearts. I left just enough. When the file exported, I walked home, opened the door to our apartment, and heard Lena in the kitchen singing an ugly, perfect song to the basil. I tapped record, 10 seconds, no edit, no secret. Later, I pressed the image. In the tiny sliver of motion and sound, I heard the best kind of proof. A chair scraping, water running, a voice I love mispronouncing oregano on purpose, and my laugh, the easy kind, the one that never needed a filter.